Hi, I'm Governor John Hickenlooper. You're tuned in to Get More Smarter. Are you sure you don't have something better to do?
Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, are ready to go?
Welcome to the very first episode of the Get More Smarter show. I'm Jason Bain.
And I'm Alan Franklin.
And we've got a lot to discuss, a lot about Colorado politics, a lot about what's going on with this show. And we've got to leave a lot of time for a great interview with Governor John Hickenlooper coming up here in just a minute.
Yeah, very excited about it.
So the Get More Smarter show, it's about politics, locally and nationally, but more of a focus on Colorado. ColoradoPolls.com, where Get More Smarter has been a regular feature on there for some time now, and know that it will be a little bit different in the next week, but we're improving this as we go along, and hopefully we'll look better as you drink more.
No, that's true. Drink as you watch us. That's going to help a lot.
So before we get to our interview with Governor John Hickenlooper, let's catch you up on some of the bigger political news topics. We've got to start with the absolute meltdown, cratering of John Kaiser.
We found forged signatures were used to help get a U.S. Senate candidate on the ballot.
And as of tonight, I have confirmed 10 fake signatures with more that appear suspicious.
This promising U.S. Senate campaign of former state rep John Kaiser is in turmoil tonight.
The Denver DA's office reveals it's going to review the original Kaiser petitions.
Actual people whose signatures were forged speaking out on the evening news. This really is supposed to be the Republicans' best or maybe only shot at flipping a Senate seat in the whole country this year. And their best shot at it is a candidate who didn't technically make it onto the ballot and who appears to have gotten there by some pretty blatant fraud. So you don't need Donald Trump at the top of your ballot to screw things up for you.
And this is definitely one of the worst self-destructions of a political candidate that I've ever seen, you know. Kaiser went into hiding for several days right after this story was exposed. He wouldn't respond to any reporters' inquiries. He dismissed the whole thing as a liberal stunt and so forth. All the while, reporters were going out and gathering evidence of what appeared to be really widespread fraud.
So then when he finally does decide to
well, that's when things got pretty...
to the media. John Kaiser's campaign did finally speak out. They took a couple of different strategies. The first one was to repeat to reporters seemingly as many times as possible, I'm on the ballot, I'm on the ballot. The important thing is I'm on the ballot. And you'll get a good sense for it in this mashup video here.
The important thing is that I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot, and that I'm already on the ballot. It's done. It's done. I'm on the ballot.
As you can see, he was on message.
He was on some kind of message, yeah. That didn't work, believe it or not.
As a matter of fact, I think we can all say that it spectacularly backfired. Marshall Zellinger at 7 News cornered Kaiser, and then things got pretty crazy. Watch this clip of video.
Were you the guy who was creeping around my house yesterday?
I knocked on your door.
Yeah. Oh, you woke up my kids. Yeah, you woke my baby cried for an hour after that. Did you get to meet my dog?
I met your dog and your nanny.
My dog
was very kind.
Yeah,
and your dog was kind.
My dog he's a great dog. He's bigger than you are. He's huge. He's a big guy, very protective. Look, here's the thing.
I don't know what that meant, but okay.
Oh, he's a great dog.
His size? What did you mean by his size?
Oh, have you seen him? He's a Great Dane. He's 165 pounds.
Pro tip, do not threaten reporters with your dog.
Although, I gotta tell you, Marshall Zellinger, the way he handles that interview, Kaiser talks about his dog and how big his dog is, and Marshall, you can hear him say, I don't know what that meant, but okay.
Kaiser threatening Zellinger then becomes the story. It's up in the Washington Post as John Kaiser's Rubio moment. Within 48 hours, John Kaiser was everywhere nationwide. By far the most press exposure.
And not in a good way.
Not in a good way, no. I mean, they say that there's no such thing as bad press. There's such a thing as bad press.
He figured it out.
He figured it out.
A lot of it has to do with some of the things he had said even before this story broke, like defending the petition signature process.
Yeah, this is key.
Listen to Kaiser talk about how they double and triple check their signatures.
We had double and triple checked our petition process.
Sounds kind of incriminating now, doesn't it?
Yeah. Somebody doubled.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have quadruple checked, I guess.
Or maybe they were checking to make sure they had enough forgeries.
Kaiser doesn't have time or money to recover from this. Is there any way he's not done?
I just don't see it. I don't think anybody else realistically sees it either, and I'm pretty sure that that's the answer John Kaiser was getting in Washington, D.C. when he made an unplanned trip there, canceling his planned appearance at a debate here in Colorado to go kiss the ring out in D.C. and convince them that, you know, he's not completely eliminated from this race, which he really has.
He was in D.C. meeting with Marco Rubio.
Marco the Robot Rubio. Now, appreciate the irony here for a moment of the candidate who is now famous for repeating words over and over, meeting with the guy who invented that. Kaiser has definitely got Marco Mentum coming out of this thing.
Absolutely.
No question.
Marco Mentum. There are still 4 other Senate candidates, well, maybe 3 depending on what happens with Ryan Frazier, who still could be forced to withdraw from the race.
Robert Blaha really taking a hard shot at Jack Graham over the circumstances of Graham's termination from Colorado State University's athletic director. It seems to me that there's more to be disclosed there. However far Jack Graham advances will determine probably how far that story goes.
There's really 2 scenarios left in this Senate race. It's Blaha or Graham. Somehow, you know, between the 2 of them, they have a presence on TV, or it remains a very low turnout primary and somebody like Daryl Glenn benefits as the only candidate to make it through the convention, the only candidate that Republican activists are familiar with.
That's right.
He's got top line on the ballot, doesn't have a lot of money, but maybe that's going to change.
Well, we just learned actually that Daryl Glenn has been endorsed by the Senate Conservatives Fund. You might remember them from 2010. They were at the time run by Senator Jim DeMint. And this endorsement actually could be very important to Glenn because right now we've got a situation where there's no clear frontrunner in this race. And Glenn has got more, arguably, grassroots support having won the assembly. Not just won it, but having shocked the assembly and thrown off candidates that expected to make the ballot.
I don't see any way Frazier gets his way into here. And
no, I agree with you that the overall weakness of the field is going to suppress turnout.
Can any of these candidates beat Michael Bennet?
Oh no, I'm sorry. And I don't mean to say that as a partisan thing. It's just you look objectively at the state of their campaigns, the state of the messaging, the national political environment, which is trending very, very badly for Republicans right now. There's just no Cory Gardner coming to save the Republicans this year. They say in Colorado that you've got to win the areas that you are strongest in and not lose too badly everywhere else. Well, Michael Bennet has been doing a great job out there in the agricultural areas of the state, building ties quietly so as to make sure that he has a base of support there where other urban candidates might. If you looked at Governor John Hickenlooper, who we'll be talking to in a moment here, he ran a really positive campaign that made people feel good about Colorado, good about their own lives, good about their futures. And that was a much better message for 2014 than a negative message. And I think that Michael Bennet is onto that.
Welcome back. We are excited to bring you our first ever interview on the Get More Smarter show with Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper leading things off. Governor sat down with us in his office a week and a half ago or so and talked about a lot of things involving the legislative session, but about politics in general and about where he sees his next 2 years going. Well, we are excited to be joined here today by Governor John Hickenlooper. Governor, welcome to Get More Smarter.
Glad to be here.
You've been mayor of Denver, governor of Colorado. You're the first guest on Get More Smarter. Coolest thing you've ever done, or just top 3?
Top 3 for sure, and well, give me a little time, but maybe the coolest.
By the end?
Yeah, by the end.
Right, fair enough. Before we get into some of these other questions, let me ask you about the legislative session that just ended, particularly the hospital provider fee. What was your reaction to the way it ended?
Well, it was very unfortunate that we couldn't get the hospital provider fee out of committee and just let it have a vote on the floor of the state Senate. It would have passed. We knew the votes were there. There were Republicans that would have come along. It's supported by every chamber of commerce in the state. Almost every newspaper in the state has editorialized in favor of it. I mean, it's a fee. It shouldn't count towards the Tabor cap. It's confusing to a lot of people because it's like making sausage. They don't really care about it. But, the Attorney General and the former Attorney General, both Republicans, said, no, this is a fee. This shouldn't count towards Tabor. And it allows us to build roads, right? Look at the traffic and the congestion. This is, really about the best way we can find to get money for transportation infrastructure, not to mention higher ed and, other needs.
Where do you go from here? Do you try it again next year?
Yeah, we just keep trying, or we'll look at every possible alternative, and maybe we call a special session. I mean, that's something that several people have called for. My inclination is never, I don't leap into special sessions because it's the summer, and we've gone through 120 days. People are, I think the legislators are tired of each other, probably tired of me.
Still working more than Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
On a more positive note, what stands out to you from the session?
Well, I think that, again, we got a budget done, that bipartisan budget that allows us to deal with a lot of the issues that the state faces. And I think that's part of the way Colorado does things. We got the medical, or the edible, the marijuana edible issue to a large extent resolved, and got legislation passed that makes it safer for kids. We looked at a bunch of different issues this session that they weren't the biggest. So we couldn't get the hospital provider fee. That kind of drove me nuts. But there were a lot of things we got done. Speaking of marijuana, Mitch Morrissey was telling me a story about how, for the last year or two, every event, every conference he goes to, all he gets asked about is marijuana. Same thing happened to you when you travel? It was. I mean, for a long time, the first question everywhere was marijuana. Now the first question is Trump. But then after Trump, then it goes right to marijuana. There'd be a lot of bills landing on your desk now. You're not traditionally known as somebody who vetoes a lot of legislation, but what's your thought process for when that comes up? Well, we take our time, and you have 30 days after a bill is passed to, there's a 30-day clock at which this thing goes, and you either have to sign it or veto it, or allow it to become a law without signature. We try to get both sides, and what are the pros, what are the cons? Is there a better solution out there? In some way, did the process not represent all the voices, all the self-interests around a specific issue? And if it's a place where we think there's a better solution than what was, what that they debated, or a flaw in the process, then sometimes we'll do a veto. But generally, if it gets through both houses, right now with the Democratic House and a Republican-controlled Senate, if it gets through both, most times we will support it. I mean, red light, photo radar, that's another one. I mean, we vetoed it last year, and we said, listen, you cannot tell local communities, you can't take away tools that make their communities safer. You just can't. So you can say, you can't do this for raising money. Right. You can't do this out of whim or caprice, but you can't. The legislature, I don't think, has the right to go and tell local communities you cannot do something. And they gave us the same bill. I'm not sure what magic they were expecting. Will you sign it more angrily this time? Well, you write these long veto letters, and this one we might just cross out the date. I'm just kidding. Right. Let me transition a little bit then to a couple of other questions. You'd been mentioned in the past as a potential candidate for president. How close, or how much did you think about that before 2016? I think and you look at the primaries that we've seen this year, and I'm a moderate. There's plenty of room for. Yeah, right. Well, everybody else ran. I'm a moderate, right? I'm kind of right in the middle. I believe in incremental progress. It's the exception where you have kind of a revolution in one issue or another. And I'm very pro-business, but I want high environmental standards. I want high, ethical standards. And in a primary, I wouldn't do very well. I just wouldn't. If I'd ever had, when I ran for mayor, it was a nonpartisan race, or I would have never won. And by the time I was so successful and popular as a mayor, and Governor Ritter decided he wasn't going to run for re-election, well, Governor Ritter, Senator Ken Salazar, everybody came in and said, this is the guy who should be the next governor. And so again, I didn't have to go through a primary there. But I'm a type of person, a small business guy who's really not a traditional politician. I wouldn't do well in a primary. Take us back to some of those moments when, before you were sworn in as mayor, before you were sworn in as governor. Were you more nervous for one or the other, do you think? I was much more nervous when I became mayor, because I really didn't know anything about government. I didn't, when I won the first election, there was a runoff election, but I won the first election with almost 50% of the vote. I had double what anyone else had, and it became clear that I was probably going to win. And I remember sitting down with Michael Bennett, who had been a volunteer on the campaign, and he asked me who I thought was considering for have a chief of staff. And I honestly had no idea what a chief of staff did. I was clueless, and he had to kind of explain it to me. I was so, I mean, that innocence and that ignorance gave me a lot of power. It made me imagine we could do things and be much more ambitious than we might otherwise have been, and take on things that we otherwise might not have taken on. But it did make for a lot of anxiety, right? I was nervous.
Have you had lost that first race for mayor, do you think you'd have tried again?
Well, I fully expected to lose, and I probably wouldn't have tried again. You know, I wanted to, when I ran for mayor that first time, just like all the campaigns since, but we made very clear that we weren't going to do any negative ads. We didn't do any opposition research even. We wanted to talk about a positive vision for the state. We wanted to, or for the city. We wanted to have, you know, an opportunity to show what we thought a positive campaign could look like, and that, you know, someone from business could bring fresh ideas into a political campaign and not lose their values, not lose that willingness to stick up for the little guy, and make sure the system is fair for everybody.
There's a famous story from, I guess, end of 2005, it probably was, when you had a press conference to announce you were not going to run for governor. And the story goes you had one speech in one pocket, one in the other. Is that really how it happened?
Well, we had 2 speeches prepared for sure, and for the week preceding that, every night I'd go to bed thinking I should run for governor. There's so many people that want me to, and there are people I really respect and hear all the good reasons why. And then every morning I'd wake up and I'd have second thoughts, and I would, you know, say, you know, I've only been the mayor for 3 years. I have so much more to learn here. If I became governor, I probably wouldn't be as good a governor as what the state deserves. And so each night I'd be fired up, and each morning I'd wake up, and my old friend Mike Dino took me aside and he said, you know, I had a basketball coach who told me once that when you have a really good idea at night, it better be a better idea in the morning, or else it probably wasn't such a good idea in the first place. And when he said that to me, it just rang a bell, because clearly that was exactly my problem. Every morning I woke up, and that you know, sleep allows you, I mean, your subconscious does all kinds of things with your ideas. And I think when you wake up after, you know, with a difficult issue, when you first wake up, that's probably your core self. And I think that was the right decision. I'm to this day very glad we didn't jump into that race. And even if I'd won, I don't think I would have been anywhere near as good. And turned out Bill Ritter, you know, did win the nomination and became governor, and had a great 4 years.
Right. In every one of your elections, you always read pundits somewhere talking about the advantage of the name Hickenlooper. What do you think it's worth? Let's say there's Paul Hickenlooper and George Bain are running. Hickenlooper gets how many points straight out of the gate?
Well, it's a question of whether it's a liability or a benefit, right? It's an old Dutch name it means hedgehopper. Heckenlopen, Hecken, the old Dutch for hedge, and lopen, like a wolf lopes. And so it was a curse as a kid, right? Because it becomes poop and scooper and chicken cooper, all those things. I think it is an advantage. I think ultimately having a name like that is so unusual, and I think it makes people feel a little closer to you in the fact that they kind of imagine that at least at certain parts of your childhood you went through some pretty difficult times, which is true. You can't have a name like that without a lot of teasing, and it does, makes you more empathetic to people that that haven't had good breaks.
So if you had to grade it, what do you think, 2 points, 3 points, straight out of the gate?
Probably 2 or 3 points, that's about right, yeah, right out of the gate. And then tell a few jokes about it, and you're working in the dialogue, it could be 4 or 5 points.
Right. When people are comfortable enough to ask you about your life as governor, what are the questions you get that, are any that really stand out to you? And I'm sure you get a lot of, what's it like to live in the governor's mansion? Or
yeah. Well, the people ask all the time about how do you survive the press and the scrutiny and the loss of privacy, and part of that is I've never done anything I was ashamed of, so that hasn't been that big an impact, but it does get in the way of I've got a 13-year-old son, and when you're going into a restaurant and we just want to have a talk and, just watch this baseball game, and you get that rare moment where it's just the two of us, and people come up and they want to have a selfie, they want to talk to you, they lobby you about an issue, and that's hard. And you stop going to restaurants, because when you have time with your son now, we almost always either stay at our house or go to with friends or something. So that's a difficult part. The governor's mansion, people think that's such a big, glorious thing to live in. Well, not everyone feels comfortable in a big, glorious house, right? And I wake up in the bedroom that's bigger than the first house I rented. The bedroom in the mansion is probably bigger than the whole house, just about, not quite, but just about. And I'm the kind of person, I'm never going to feel comfortable there, right? I wake up every morning thinking, I'm not going to miss this one. I mean, it's funny, two sides. One, I wake up and say, I can't believe I'm here in this house. Look at this thing's amazing, right? Then the other side is, this isn't me, right? And when I leave this job, I'm not going to miss this. Right? I'm not going to go out and try and find a big mansion to live in.
You're not going to keep a key.
No, I'm not going to keep a key.
Speaking of weird questions, I can do you one better here, I think. I've always wondered this about any high-ranking elected official. Have you ever been at a cocktail party or something and you sit down and somebody says, "Oh, John, what kind of business you in?" He doesn't know you're governor. Has that ever happened to you?
Sure. It's especially with the fragmentation of the media now. I mean, it happens even in Colorado. Less so in Colorado, but certainly out. When I'm in another state somewhere visiting a friend or giving a speech somewhere, and the night before we'll be sitting with a couple friends in a restaurant, and we'll meet somebody, and they don't know, and they say, and I always, they ask what kind of business you're in, and I say I'm in the service industry. And they go, service industry? I said, yeah, I spent a lot of time in the restaurant business, and, I opened 14 restaurants around the country, and I really got to know the service business. So now I've just been expanding that business. And they go, so you've expanded the restaurant business? I go, no, I've just expanded the service business. And lots of times they just change the subject. But sometimes they say, well, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, I'm actually the governor of Colorado, and my job is to try and figure out how to get, the state to provide better service to all of our taxpayers. And it's good for a laugh.
That's got to be an awkward moment for some of those people. You've got 2 more years before your term ends. You've got some time to work on your agenda. What's your proudest moment to date, and what do you want to get done before you leave the mansion?
Sure. Well, I think we tried to bring the principles of entrepreneurship and business into government, and get government to do a better job, to be more effective and more efficient in how they deliver services, and at the same time more equitable. Make sure the little guy doesn't get, pushed to the side every time. And I think I'm very proud that when we came in, one of our goals was to say, all right, we want Colorado to be recognized not just as a great place for vacations, but as a great place to build a business and build a family and build a life. We did a bottom-up economic development policy, went to every county, what do you want to see in your economic future, took all that together, and really had 6 basic elements, right? How do you get the state to be more pro-business, but at the same time, high standards, right? Highest ethical standards, highest environmental standards. Not going to compromise any of our standards, but quality of life starts with a good job, so we're going to focus on that. And I think we've seen that. Access to capital, got rid of red tape and bureaucracy. Again, you don't want to ever diminish the protections that we have that protect the little guy, but you don't want to tie up businesses in the bureaucracy. It drives people nuts, makes them hate government, right? So I think we are now recognized. We've gone from, and we see this in rankings, we are now recognized one of the top 3 states in almost every category around pro-business. Workforce, a place that startups, places to start a business. But also, I mean, U.S. News and World Report just ranked us the #1 place to live. Well, part of that being a great place to live is having a lot of choices in what kind of jobs and careers you want.
Isn't the downside that then we have all these people moving here now?
Well, that is a downside if we can't keep investing and making sure we have the infrastructure that handle them.
Right.
Most of them are going to live in the cities. They'll rarely go to the mountains. So I don't think it's a big downside. But certainly something we have to consider is making sure we keep up with having enough infrastructure to handle the people.
So what's next for you? You've still got 2 years, but are you done with elected office? What do you think?
Oh, I probably am done with that. But I think in these 2 years, we could really, we're going to look at workforce. And if you want to look at something that that people should care about. I mean, 70% of our kids are never going to get a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree from a college or a community college. And that's just history. The last 30 years, it hasn't budged more than 1%. We're going to push. We're working with LinkedIn as a partnership to, they have a website they're just starting now called Skillful, but you'll be able to go to a community college class and click on it, and you'll see not just what you read, but also what skills you're going to learn. Right? And then you can click on those skills and they'll show you what kind of jobs you're prepared for. You click on those jobs, it'll show who's hiring, what they're paying right now. So it collapses that space between potential employers and potential employees. And as you go through life, let's say you work at Walmart and you learn how to do inventory, you'll get a badge. You'll put that badge up on the kind of like a living resume that will stick with you through LinkedIn. We want to tie that with apprenticeships so that those kids who want to, when let's say they're 17, they're about to go in their junior year in high school, they go get a job, and they're an apprentice. And so we give a little tax credit to the business. They'll get $10, $12 an hour, but they'll get paid and they'll work 3 days, and then 2 days they'll either go back to their high school or go out to a job training center or a community college, and they will in those 2 days study to get their high school degree, but also they'll learn stuff that will help them in, if they're insurance or in banking or in, cybersecurity, whatever. They'll learn other things in a classroom that'll help them do better at their job. And I think that has the potential with the LinkedIn partnership. Once we get that in place, we can scale it up for the people that are 45 and 55 who've lost their careers to technology. And if you look at like bank tellers, we have a lot less bank tellers now than we used to. And bank tellers have to be numerate, high degree of precision, get along well with other people, sense of urgency. That's what cybersecurity people need. And I think if we have a vehicle to get bank tellers who lost their careers, I think in 6 months we could get them a $60,000 job. But we just have to get that interface and make sure that we do a better job much more rapidly of getting people retrained when technology takes away their careers.
That's great. Well, Governor, thank you very much for joining us.
You bet.
We still just top 3? Do we move up since the beginning?
Peak experience.
This is number 1.
Peak experience.
Best thing you've ever done.
Welcome back to the Get More Smarter show. That about wraps things up for us this week for our first ever episode. So check back with us for the second half of Governor Hickenlooper's interview about his book, his memoir that came out on May 24th. And get ready next week for yet another episode of the Get More Smarter show.